study wave action, the depth of water, salinity of water, whatever, supposedly to aid the navies of both our countries in better understanding the ocean. And it wasn't until really in the 80s that it really became known as for what it really was, which was a secret submarine detection base, detecting submarines all over the North Atlantic.
The operation was part of the SUSOS system, an underwater network of microphones deployed throughout the North Atlantic. The signals were channeled ashore to CFS Shelburne at Government Point, where they were monitored 24 hours a day.
In addition to that, they had another grid laid out under the water, which was called the MAD grid, or Magnetic Anomaly Detection Grid, which could detect the hull signatures of heavy metal vessels, submarines in particular, and they could pinpoint them on a grid as to where these particular vessels were when they were picked up.
But why would the UFO travel to Government Point?
You have to understand that Shelburne is part of a system for monitoring the Atlantic Ocean for the Soviet fleet, but more importantly for Soviet submarines. And so you're always concerned about anything coming within view of your sensing systems. And you want to know how vulnerable you are, because maybe this is something before an attack. First thing you do is knock out the other guy's detection system. So what I'm saying is there's a part of a much larger picture. It's nice to talk about saucers landing on the White House lawn, you know, but in the real world, there are all kinds of electronic barriers, fences, calling machine detection systems. And I would be astonished if alien visitors didn't pay attention to these, for their own self-interest, if nothing else.
The sophisticated equipment that CFS Shelburne held told them this thing was simply a few miles off the coast, resting on the seabed. I was told that a flotilla of ships was quickly assembled over the resting object.
In addition to the naval activity on the water, Air Force Neptunes from Summerside, Prince Edward Island, flew grid patterns over the area, using hydrophones and radar to search for other objects. Meanwhile, Navy divers were diving on the primary target.
What the divers told me simply was that there was an operation at the mouth of Shag Harbour, and they held station on ships and dove over a period of 1 week over what was an apparent UFO on the bottom, and that it was being assisted by a second craft that was somehow lending assistance to it. One of the expressions they used was that there was still activity going on down there. These men claimed to have been in the water and watched us at a fairly close range as they were placing cameras and sensors, etc. It's an incredible tale.
Not only did they see objects down there, but they saw things as well. And we sort of have to leave that in your own imagination as to what these things were. They're certain, or at least this particular diver is certain, that they weren't from here. He was definitely afraid to go any further than that because of the fact that he was with the military, and what we understand was not allowed to talk about them. Not only does he say that, but we've had evidence of other military personnel involved in this operation who say the same thing. They're not allowed to talk about it on camera. They don't want their names mentioned for fear of some reprisals. Whatever that may be, we don't know.
Other military personnel that were at this operation in a support role have suggested that there was a great deal of tension in the operation between American and Canadian personnel. At one point, one of the officers felt it necessary to intervene at one of these discussions that was spilling out around the mess, and he tried to contain it and tell the diver to keep the comments down and that, you know, they shouldn't be talking about the operation over the Russian sub. And to which the diver responded saying, "I don't know what that goddamn thing is down there, but it's no submarine. It isn't anything from this planet. And like, you can say whatever you want, but we know what we're seeing."
But what evidence is there to support the events off Government Point? Does this recently uncovered X-file lend credibility to the divers' claims? And what happened to the UFOs. Until recently, the tale of the Shag Harbour UFO's journey to Government Point, where it was detected and observed by the military, has remained a secret. In 1993, this top-secret RCMP X-file was accidentally discovered in a Nova Scotia University archive.
There's an RCMP X-file that does make mention of a second search effort off Shelburne. Again, when we go to the flap that was unfolding over Nova Scotia, there is mention by a fisherman who made an official report to the RCMP detachment. His second last sentence of the statement is very telling in that it says, "Perhaps it is like the thing they were looking for, down off Barrington Passage, or Shag Harbour, or off Shelburne." This seems to give some indication that there was indeed a second and simultaneous search effort. And 1 week later, our former 12-mile limit was violated by a Soviet submarine that was approaching this thing. The ship's broke station sailed toward the approaching submarine to show challenge. At this point, the UFOs on the bottom become active, move under the water back down to the Gulf of Maine, break the surface and fly away.
To date, the military has not released any documentation that would lend credence to a retrieval operation at Shelburne, but that doesn't deter Chris and Don in their investigation.
I don't know who would have been in charge and overseen such an extensive operation off the coast of Shelburne, but I do know from discussing it with DND staff in Ottawa that they deny having any role in it.
I've often wondered whether now anything could be found off of Government Point. I seriously doubt it. If this thing, as the story goes, was as big an operation as we believe it was, I can't imagine them leaving anything on the bottom for anybody else to find.
Chris and Don still believe that Shag Harbour will someday offer up her secrets.
Hard to believe this was a top-secret military base at one time.
Yeah, looking at it today, I can't really picture it as being the coordination center of anything, but I suppose back during the Cold War, it was probably pretty spick and span back when Old Glory flew over there beside our own flag there.
You got to wonder whether maybe it was kept this way on purpose to make it look banal, you know, not draw attention. You know, to throw off what the true purpose of the base was.
And as part of the small but determined band of UFO investigators worldwide, they continue to search for the truth behind the lights.
And if you're asking me, what does Shag Harbour have to offer? I believe in the end, ultimately, a greater understanding of the UFO phenomena. If we can truly take the case to another level and tie down those things we missed, whether it's the one big thing or the one little thing we've missed, we'll know better what's really going on in the skies. Are these things penetrating our skies and defense system? Probably, you betcha. Can this case shed light on it? Sure. Is it the best case? Maybe, maybe not. The best one is the one that hasn't happened yet. The best one is the one where we walk in and we have a piece of physical evidence that is undisputably of extraterrestrial origin, and I can throw it on the stage and it hits with a clang. That's when I'll be happy.